there are women who come and talk to me and they start talking about the fact that a partner who they loved and cared about for a long time got up and left. And then they tell me, but they've moved on so fast. It's been weeks or months, and now they're with somebody else. All of a sudden, our 20, 30, 40-year relationship is over, and within a blink of an eye, they've replaced me with somebody else. I've been left behind. They're choosing somebody over me, and now I question everything that has happened for us in the entire time that we were together. He's just walked away like I don't even matter. And as this woman sits and tells me this story, like it might be weeks, it could be months, but it's a short time since their relationship ended, and she's struggling with, all of the usual grief stuff that comes with the relationship ending. But on top of that, maybe her friends, her kids, her family, or she herself is looking at all of their happy snaps on social media. They're happy, they're moving on with their lives, they've met somebody, they're having the best time ever, and here she is in the most painful time she's ever had in her entire life, and they're just starting fresh, having a good time. When we're left behind, we feel confused, we feel hurt, we feel angry, and oftentimes asking questions, how is it possible that somebody loved me for 10, 20, 30, 40 years could literally replace me in a heartbeat? It leaves us feeling really like we're replaceable, like we're discarded, like our whole history didn't mean anything at all. And if that's happening for you, I want to talk to you about it, because the story that you believe about that is probably not true, and I want to help you move through this and understand that what's really going on is not about you, and it's absolutely about them. It feels like a punch to the guts, right? When your relationship has ended, you are in deep, deep grief. The last thing on your mind, the last thing you could possibly think about would be meeting somebody else and starting over. And there is your ex-partner doing just that. And so your mind races going, how could they? How could they be with somebody else? Did the last 10, 20, 30 years just mean nothing at all? We feel like we've been erased, they've just wiped us out of their lives, out of their story, and our brains scramble, what did all of this mean? Was my relationship real? Was our life real? There's that sickening sense that, we could easily be replaced like that. How does that happen? Well, there's lots of reasons it happens, lots and lots of reasons. And I want to talk to you about them, and I want to talk to you about how you kind of cope if this is happening for you. So the first thing is that sometimes when people leave our lives, they have been checked out for years, up to 2 years in some cases, where people have become dissatisfied and unhappy, and gradually over time they've become less emotionally invested. So by the time they tell you that they're going, they've left you long before that. They just haven't left the actual building. And so when they leave, they're all ready to move on. They're ready to start their new life. They're prepped for it. Some of them will have planned, unfortunately, to have somebody in the wings when they leave, because they knew that they were going to leave. If you're the person who's been left behind, it's painful. Maybe you didn't agree with them leaving. Maybe you did. Maybe you both got to a space of going, God, this is a bit kind of, we're good friends, but that's about all we are these days. But you still weren't ready for them to move on so quickly. Even if you didn't want the relationship, you needed time to grieve the relationship. So while you're trying to cope and you're dealing with a pain, you've got all this other stuff going on where they've moved forward. Some people leap into new relationships because they feel guilty, or they're lonely, or they don't want to be accountable for their behavior. Some people do it because they just actually don't want to be by themselves. They want to be in a relationship. Some people do it because they're bored with their lives and they're bored with themselves, and a new person sparks energy and life into them again. That's not a great plan, by the way, because ultimately, relationships can't stay in that really exciting stage for a long time. But if you've been in a relationship for decades, it gets stale, and somebody who's going to spark a light and make them feel special again is somebody that they're going to hook onto, rather than dealing with what went on for us and why didn't we try and work on it and get things better and come together instead of pull apart. So There's lots of reasons why people will move on quickly. You know, sometimes they want a distraction. Sometimes they don't want to deal with the fact that they are in midlife and they're bored of themselves and bored of their lives. And so getting a distraction can feel really, really good. You know, it can really hit us hard depending on this thing called attachment, you know, the way that we learned to bond and connect with people. And if we have an anxious attachment style, this can really open up a lot of old wounds about not being good enough or not being worthy enough or not being picked, you know, maybe being too much or too needy. And, you know, you're not just sort of grieving the relationship. This stuff that's happened, they're leaving, has activated all sort of abandonment issues for you from your past. And that's why, you know, the hurt is deeper than it probably should be, because it's touching more than just what's happening in this moment. It's bringing up a lot of old stuff for you too. I want you to understand something. When a partner leaves you, whatever they do after that is not about your value and worth. It's not about whether you're good enough, worthy enough, lovable enough. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about their stuff. It's about where they're at and what they're doing with their life. It's not a reflection on us. You know, it doesn't tell us what kind of a partner we were or we were not when they move on. It does tell us how they cope with their discomfort, how they cope with endings and new beginnings. You know, a fast rebound is not proof of how replaceable we are. It simply reflects so many other things about what the other person is going through and what they're willing to endure. You know, they're willing to do the emotional work to actually work on whatever it was that prompted them to leave in the first place. So what do you do now, you know, in this space where you are trying to grieve and grappling with being replaced and feeling like you're not good enough or worthy enough? This can be really hard if you have kids who are still going between two houses and kids are telling you stories about what's happening in the other house. It can be very painful. Please know you could never be replaced as a mother. You are a mum. You were born, they were born your children. You were their mother. You will always be their mother no matter what is going on. You know, if you're going through the grief of a relationship ending, the moving on, and that person being introduced to your kids, it can be so painful. The most important thing to start off with is to just know that what you're feeling is really normal. You know, that this is awful. It is awful. It is painful. It is too much sometimes. You know, your brain is telling you stories about whether you mattered or didn't, whether you can be replaced or can't. And none of that is true. It feels true, and I get it, but none of it is. And what we need to do is anchor ourselves in facts that we absolutely know for sure. You know, you stayed in that relationship, you love that person, they mattered to you, you love your kids if you have them, you know. And right now what you have to do is do the very next right thing for you. Not to react to what they're doing, but as a commitment to yourself. You need to take care of yourself and love yourself like you would a really good friend. You know, if your girlfriend came and it happened to her, what would you do to help her get through it? What would you do to make things easier for her? And do those things for yourself. It can feel like you're never going to recover in those early days, especially if they've moved on. It can feel like it is impossible and too difficult and you're never, ever, ever going to get through it. You will. Trust me, I work with thousands of women from around the world going through just that, and I honestly can tell you you'll get through it. But it will take as long as it takes, and you've got to do it one step at a time. If you're stuck and you want a bit of help, on my YouTube channel you will find some resources that you can download for free and have a read of them. You are welcome to come and join me for my live Q&A sessions. They're usually logged somewhere on this channel. I'm not a techie person, but they are on here. And you can press the subscribe button and the notification button. It will tell you when things are coming up. I try and let people know on my other social media platforms when I'm doing things over here. So please have a look at those. Have a look at some of the playlists. They've got lots of different videos on specific topics, so they might be helpful for you. If you're like me and you struggle with tech and you can't find them, please don't fret. Just make a comment down below and I'll direct you or try and point you in the right direction of where you can find things. So don't worry if you're finding it a bit tricky finding things. I know you're hurting. I know that it's really tricky. If you're in the early stages of separation, I run a workshop a couple of times a year. It's a free workshop called Heartbreak to Healing. You're more than welcome to come and join me if that's happening soon. And again, you can ask me for the information down in the comments and I'll get that for you and let you know when the next one is happening. So when you have survived every single difficult moment that has ever happened in your life up to this minute, and as much as you feel like you will not get through this, you will. You just have to do it one teeny tiny step at a time. Take care.